Hello everybody, and welcome to an update video. We're going to talk about the Star Wars Tabletop RPG, and we're also going to talk about Patreon. Now, I haven't talked about these things in a couple weeks because I've had a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with this stuff, and I'll talk about why I haven't put up a storytime video for Star Wars or anything yet, but I want to start with Patreon, so let's get that out of the way. First of all, you can go support us on Patreon at patreon.com/OSWguild. I'll put the link in the description below, and this all is for getting the Star Wars Tabletop series up and off the ground. We got money from last month, and we're going to use that money to purchase a soundboard. I'm currently in talks with Yamaha. It's the only reason I haven't picked it up yet, to get a really good deal on it, a kind of like a sponsored deal on it, which would help save a lot of money in order for us to get other really cool stuff. So in that same vein, I'm also contacting other companies. Now, our cameras they're expensive. We know that. So at this point in time, they may be just out of our range for what we need. So I've kind of devised a plan in order to get the thing up and running, to get some nice alternate cameras that are way cheaper, like 10 times cheaper, and just to be able to get the series up off the ground. And then once you guys have an idea of what it's like, then we'll work toward getting the new cameras. So that's kind of the plan currently. I also wanted to mention that if you are a patron right now and you're supporting us on Patreon, this is just a friendly reminder that the way Patreon is set up is it's a monthly thing. So if you do not want to pay out at the end of this month, then go and pause it. And even if it does, we have ways of reversing it, so don't worry about that. But just as a precautionary reminder, like, be careful with that. Remember that it's a thing that's going to happen, because I don't want it hurting you guys in the end, right? This is something that is meant to, provide a really cool series for you guys, and I don't want it like coming and biting you in the butt because you forgot that it paid out monthly. So there's your little reminder. I'll make sure to do that every month if I can. But the thing with it is, we're working on the Yamaha thing, the little, I wouldn't call it like a sponsored thing, but just a deal for the soundboard. The microphones we're going to have to get at full cost. There's really no way around that. But when it comes down to the cameras, we're contacting Blackmagic, which are the people who make the stuff. But at the end of the day, those are probably going to have to wait until like later in the winter, when we are not only able to get them, but after you guys have already seen the series and know how it's like, and that way you kind of get an idea. So we have ways of getting the series rolling beforehand. We just, right now we're working on the sound stuff, and the sound stuff I'm trying to get at a discount, which is the only reason I haven't gotten it yet. So everything that came in from Patreon last month is just like sitting there waiting to get that soundboard and microphone. We're just, in contacts with these companies, making sure that maybe we can get stuff in the future from them. And also talking with Yamaha, making sure that is exactly the board that we want and stuff like that. So that's the Patreon update. Now, why haven't I put up a storytime video for the Star Wars Tabletop RPG and updating you guys on what's going on behind the scenes with that? Well, there's been a lot of really cool stuff happening in our game, and it's, the reason I haven't put up a story time is not because we haven't had any cool stuff happening. It's that we've had so much stuff happening that I've decided to kind of hold it back a little bit, because I didn't want to give too much away to the players. Some of them watched this stuff, and there was really no way around avoiding some upcoming spoilers. But now that we've kind of gone through that territory, I can now talk about what's been going on in the game and my plans for doing story times and keeping you guys updated on that kind of stuff, and what the series will look like plot-wise when we start it, which is really cool. Because you got to remember, the game has been going on, as I punch my keyboard, the game has been going on since like earlier 2016. And we've been playing this entire time, so there's all this backstory that you guys aren't going to be able to see necessarily, and I'm trying to give you as much of that in the story times as possible before we make some videos in the future that hash out a lot of those details. But I think it would be fun to just kind of come into what we're going to call episode 2 when we start the series, fresh with like an idea kind of what happened, like the Star Wars title crawl, like idea of what happened, but not every single little detail. It'll be fun to learn those details as we go. So we're going to obscure some of that stuff. But what has been going on, and why hasn't there been a story time in particular? So I think there's 2 things to that. The first is the next story time I'm going to do, which is going to be here soon, I'm not going to do the scripted thing that I've done for the past couple. And I want to try, and I kind of know what the reaction is going to be already, but I do want to try it for the sake of trying it. It's just do more of a discussionary, this is what happened, these are what these people said, this is like everything that happened. Just to see how that one rolls, because it does take a long time to write the scripts for these and then edit it and everything. Not that I'm complaining, I like doing it. It's actually a lot of fun. But I want to try the other way because we haven't tried the other way at all yet. So I kind of already know that people are already going to prefer the way I've been doing it, but I just want to see what the reaction would be to the other one, because that gives me some data for some future stuff. So that's kind of why it hasn't happened, is I've been kind of putting it off because I know that that's the way I want to do it. And this is the second thing, as I said earlier, I wanted to kind of avoid spoiling some of the story stuff for the players. But just as like a little taste of what's happened, the players, and if you haven't watched the other ones, then you're going to be totally lost here. But the players have, on Ord Mantell, figured out more of the kind of undercurrent plot that has been going on, the weird mystery of like who has been causing these murders. And they have since gone and tracked down a lead, which is they've gone to Dathomir, and I'm at the point of taking a lot of stuff from the Clone Wars series, because we're in the section of the universe that got affected by the Clone Wars series quite a bit. So if you've never watched Clone Wars, that's fine. I haven't really either. I've just seen the episodes that are really relevant to this, such as the Dathomir arc, where like Darth Maul ends up coming back and everything, and you're like, but I thought he was dead. But his brother ends up going and recovering like the top half of his body, and he's like connected to like a weird mechanical spider thing. And they take him back to the Night Sisters, which are native Dathomirians, which they don't really exist anymore. And the Dathomirian women kind of like lord over these Zabrak men called the Night Brothers, who just happen to live on Dathomir. They're not natives of that planet. And one of the main characters there like revives Darth Maul, or like brings his mind back into sanity, because he was insane before. And then there's like a small story arc of Darth Maul trying to go get revenge on Obi-Wan, and it's really cool. Like I think the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, like those series are really cool for what they are, and you could just like watch them very, very quickly on Netflix. So I would highly suggest it. From what I've seen, especially of the Dathomir story, it was really fun. So I made a long like story arc on Dathomir. So that's where the players have been for like 4 weeks now. They got to Dathomir. They ran into some trouble. They've had some pretty awesome fights, but they've been pretty much sneaking around in like the red swamps there. And it's kind of getting to the actually this next session is going to be some of the penultimate story there, where they found the Night Sister stronghold, and they're going to confront that. And Cookie, our Wookiee, his name gets me every time, is looking for his father, who was basically tracking down the man responsible for enslaving the Wookiees during the Civil War in the galaxy. And after the Death Star was destroyed, the second one, Han Solo and Chewbacca went and helped free the natives of Kashyyyk, which are the Wookiees, because they were enslaved. Now, Cookie's father was searching and tracking down the man that was really responsible for that, because he was part of kind of the Kashyyyk army, the newly instated Kashyyyk army, and they got to Dathomir because the guy knew that basically the Empire had beef with the Shadow Collective, which the Night Brothers were a part of, so he figured he might be able to find some kind of sanctuary there with the Night Brothers. Anyways, he goes to Dathomir, And then Cookie, the Wookiee, basically learns that his father was captured by the Night Brothers because the Night Brothers and Night Sisters don't like outsiders, and that's why they're on Dathomir. They're searching for his father, and they find some other cool stuff there as well. So there's like a lot of plot lines, but basically they're coming to the end of that story. So they're at the like little penultimate conflict that's going to happen. Maybe they'll find his father. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll be confronted by some Night Sisters. And the cool thing that has happened is Doc, the character that was like a colonist, that's a class, and he was a healer, where he didn't really find his place in the party as that class. So me and Six, who's the player, decided to like full on, because he had force powers, because that was kind of like a cool plot line for the story, decided straight up like, you know what, let's just turn you into a Jedi. So how narratively do we do that? And I'll really go into the details of how I did this when I do the story time. But long story short, he goes into a cave and finds what's called a Vergence, which is like a place of power within the Star Wars universe where the Force kind of all comes together in a Vergence. In fact, one of the books for Star Wars tabletop RPG stuff for the Force and Destiny really goes over what Vergences are and puts some in the world for you to go and find, and some cool items that are involved with that. But this one in particular I made up based on the lore of Dathomir that I already knew. Dathomir's a pretty crazy planet to begin with, so why not go with the whole Sleeper storyline? So there's a thing called the Sleeper on Dathomir, which is like a giant crustacean creature that's massive, that lives within the waters in Dathomir, like below Dathomir. And they're like magical, mystical waters. And that's how the Night Sisters get their powers, is they get it from the Sleeper. So I figured to have this really cool plot line of how Doc gets his like full Force powers and becomes more of a Force user, more of a Jedi. And we straight up flipped his class to a Consular, which is a Force and Destiny class, and like wiped out all of his abilities. So there was a lot of like stuff going on behind the scenes there. But basically there was this really cool story with the Sleeper, and then the Sleeper tried to eat him, and it was cool. Again, I'll get into that when I go into the story time. But there was that whole plot line on Dathomir as well. So they've been here for a few weeks, and that's what we've been dealing with. And that's why I haven't really made the story time videos, because I wanted to finish all of Dathomir before I made those videos, simply because I wanted the plot line to flow a little bit better, and for me to have a better understanding of what happened so I can make the videos better. Because as much as I think I know what's going to happen, it really boils down to what the heck the players did. And now that we've had several weeks to build up to this, I can go back and make these storytime videos, and really explain some really freaking cool stuff about what they did and what's coming up. Speaking about what's coming up, this will be the last thing we touch on, is we kind of, and this is something that a good GM does. They ask what the players want out of the story, and because we're coming to the end of this current story arc, the episode 1 story arc, and we're getting to the end of that, and we're still quite a ways away, but we are getting to the end of that. I asked the players what they wanted out of the second episode. I asked them if it would be fun to do a spy games infiltration. They're trying to keep their secrets or their identity secret, but they're infiltrating an organization, and within that infiltration, they're having to learn specific bits of information and stuff like that. So if they would like that, they all pretty much unanimously said that would be awesome. We would enjoy that. And there's some cool things that come along with that. First, that would be the plot of the second episode. So that would carry on for much of, that first part of it at the very least, and how that all plays out. So that would be what you guys get to see. You guys get to see them infiltrating this organization, how they go about doing it, what kind of ways they go about infiltrating, and just whether it works or not, the information they learn from that. And I would tell you what they're infiltrating or who they're infiltrating, but they don't know that yet. And again, they watch these videos, so they just know that it will be an infiltration plot line, which I think will be it'll be cool to explore for me as a storyteller, because I haven't been able to do anything like that really. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. On top of that, it all really works well with Rogue One. And while it's impossible for us to tie into Rogue One, because Rogue One is the story of how the Death Star plans were stolen and that whole thing. And that movie looks fantastic. We are actually in the Force Awakens timeline, so we're tying in with those movies and how that all works, and everything involved with that. And I'll get to a really cool thing with that in a second, but it would be fun to have a theme of whatever movie is coming out. So the theme of Rogue One is kind of infiltration and them getting this stuff, and it being a huge underdog in that war. And at the end of that story, we pretty much know everybody's going to die. Like, it's pretty obvious because none of those characters are in any of the other movies or any of the other lore past when the Death Stars exploded. So they probably die. Like, while our characters probably won't die, there's always the chance of it. So there's kind of like a cool theme and connection that goes with that. So that's kind of the idea. Is we'll start episode 2. You guys will be able to see it. Then later in the winter, when Rogue One comes out, there'll be like some themes there that you're able to relate with the movie. And along those lines, if you haven't read Star Wars Bloodline, which is the story of how Princess Leia ends up going and starting the Resistance, and I will talk about this in some of the storytime stuff, I would highly suggest it. I recently finished it. It's a fantastic book. It's well written, and it gives a lot of insight into The Force Awakens because it's about 5 years before. But that book actually does tie into what the heck our story is about. And when we give you the rundown of how it all ties into episode 2 and how we're going to continue the story for you guys to watch, Bloodline will actually play a big part in that, because that was a big part of the galaxy at the time. That was another side of the galaxy that our players don't get to see, but is a big factor in how the story proceeds forward. So it's really cool. I would highly suggest that book while you're waiting for the Tabletop series to start. But finally, I think the way that we're going to do episode 2 is going to be really fun, because as an infiltration plotline, they won't be able to take any of their stuff with them necessarily. So in a way, it will be like starting over, which will be perfect as a viewer, because you'll be able to see kind of the game at its base level, and then see how we add all this stuff on top of it. So I won't necessarily need to explain all of the cool items that I've given the players or anything like that, because by the time they're done with this plot line and kind of start getting their stuff back, you'll be able to already know the base game and how it works. So it was kind of like a double-edged blade of how I want to go about cutting up episode 2, and it ends up working really well for that plot line. So there's that. But with that, I plan on doing some more storytime videos. Expect those really soon. I'm already working on them right now, and how I'm threading the story together so it makes sense for you guys. But at the end of the day, this is only happening because you guys are supporting us on Patreon. So again, if you want to, go to patreon.com/OSWguild. Again, that link is in the description. And you can go and support us there. And if you're already a patron, remember that it is about to tick over. So if you don't want it ticking over at the end of this month, go and stop it. And if it does, again, no big deal, we can fix it. But with all of that being said, we shall see you guys next time.